What's going on, guys? This is Oliver, formerly from Response AI, and now running a few different softwares, Tricomb.com and then Getseer.com. Listen, in this video, we're going to be building a software, right? So there's been a lot of comments, a lot of Twitter DMs or XDMs, things like that. A few comments on the video saying, look, like all of this theory is good, but how do we like build a software, right? Now today, basically, before I actually build the software with you guys, I'll go through a few different, like philosophical things and explaining how we're actually going to do it. But if you guys want to just skip to me actually building it with the tools and that kind of thing, just go into the description and there's video chapters for each section. And obviously, we're going to just start straight away. So in essence, really, the landscape of entrepreneurship is different now. So software is different in general because AI has tilted the scales in our favor as people who don't know how to code, right? So we're like, if you're the dreamer or the thinker or the doer, whatever it may be, you can now do pretty much whatever you want because AI will build the tool for you, right? Or build the software for you. Now, building a software is not like a privilege anymore. It used to require years of technical expertise and computer science and stuff like that, and now it doesn't, right? The barriers to entry have crumbled, basically. So now the playing field is leveled. So the most valuable skill, guys, today isn't coding. It's actually the ability to articulate your vision clearly and create the product through natural language, right? So how we speak. Because this is the new era, right? Where ideas are currency. So anyone can have an idea, right? Everyone that you know has an idea. But execution is now democratized. So anyone can execute if they want, but you just got to work for it, right? And you no longer need technical knowledge to code, right? So the rise of what's called natural language processing, or NLP, and you've got like, AI powered tools like Claude or DeepSeek, whatever it may be, or GPT. It's altered the way that we approach software dev, right? So you don't need to know how to write any code to build a functional app. And today we're going to be building a functional application without any coding experience, just knowledge, and I'll show you how to actually build it, like the main skeleton, right? Now, what you need is a basic understanding of how software works. You've got the front end, the back end, the APIs, all that kind of stuff, and how to communicate your ideas, right? This is the new literacy. Now, Paul Graham said the best ideas come from scratching your own itch, right? But now, in the example, you don't need to know how to scratch it. You just need to describe the itch to an AI, and then it'll create the back scratcher for you in that sense. This shift is insane because it means that anyone with a problem can now articulate it to AI, and then it will build the solution, right? So how can I speak my ideas into existence? So this is the main theme of 2025, right? So basically, the most valuable skill isn't technical expertise, it's idea articulation. So the ability to take a completely empty concept, break it down into clear chunks for the AI to understand and the tools that we use to understand. And this is what I call speaking your ideas into existence. So it's not about how to build something, it's about knowing how to describe it, right? So for example, let's say you want to create a tool that scrapes website data and stores it for analysis, right? This is what we'll be building today. A decade ago, this would have required sort of this deep knowledge of web scraping and things like that and server infrastructure, whatever it may be. Today, we just have to talk to AI and it will build it, right? And the challenge isn't technical, it's more like conceptual, right? So can you break down the idea into components, and how do you describe each step to the AI so that we know where we're at? Now, the power of articulation means that today, no ideas are out of reach, right? So you can build a mobile app, you can build some, complex software like Zoom or Salesforce. This is where the magic happens, guys, is actually just talking to AI and discussing things. I must talk to AI now 4 or 5 hours a day as part of just running the softwares and building my business, right? You got to talk to AI more, guys, So by articulating your idea, you're not just describing it, you're defining that sort of blueprint of it, right? So let's take a concrete example, right? So cloning a $1 million SaaS product, right? So suppose we want to build a tool that allows users to input a domain like apple.com. The tool scrapes that website and then saves the data for export, right? There are dozens of these tools that make millions per year, and we're going to build one today, right? But don't worry, if this just doesn't interest you, this isn't the point. You should follow along and see how we build this, because I'm talking about how to build it conceptually and the skeleton, and you can copy that skeleton to build anything you want, guys, right? So here's how the workflow breaks down. The front end. In this app, this is where the user interacts with the website and the tool. And what they will do is there'll be a form that they can type in the domain that they want to scrape. So let's say apple.com. Building this is really straightforward, guys. It's just an input field and a button, right? Now, the backend is where the data is stored. So I'm going to show you how to build a backend. And once the user submits the domain, the backend needs to sort of handle the request and process the data and all that stuff, right? Don't worry about that. The scraper is the third and most important part. And this is basically what we're actually going to be using to scrape the websites, right? So it has to handle the content, avoid all the bots, extract the data. But here's the thing. You don't have to build this from scratch, guys. You can use an API, right? Now, an API is when you piggyback off someone else's code and they either charge you for it or you get it for free. Firecrawl, for example, is a paid tool, but you have a few thousand credits for free. This is just for the example today. But you need to get into your head, guys, that when you build a software, you don't have to build everything from scratch. For example, we're not going to build the back end from scratch. We're going to get AI to build the front end from scratch. We are going to get someone else's code that scrapes websites, and we're just going to use that code. We're going to piggyback, right? Not only do we not need to know how to code, but we don't even need to know how to build the thing with AI at all, because we can use other people's APIs. And again, guys, an API is just someone else's code that we can use, and they've allowed us to do that. It's not illegal or anything like that. They have made their API public. In other words, they've made their code public, and we can call upon it to do stuff for us. So quick philosophy, right? At its core, natural language coding, or in other words, talking to AI, is about trust, right? It's trust in your ability to articulate the ideas and the AI's ability to understand and execute them. It's this bizarre relationship, guys, right? Because you can shout at the AI, you can ask it questions, get frustrated with it, congratulate it, thank it, but the AI does not give a shit, right? It's a mirror reflecting your ability to communicate the idea effectively, right? So let's go. Let's do it, right? This video is going to be choppy. It's raw, it's live. I'll be brute force building the app to show you guys that you can build anything you want with enough persistence, right? There'll be some cuts and stuff like that for me to go to the bathroom or have a drink, right? But essentially, I'm going to be building things from scratch, and you're just going to follow along with it, and you can just copy me to build your own, all right? So let's get started. So if we get into the front end, right? So we're going to be talking about the front end first. We're then going to be talking about the back end, and then we'll talk about Firecrawl, or in other words, building the actual API, right? So all we need to know is that when we are building a front end, it is what the user is seeing and using. And with AI these days, we can effectively create beautiful front ends by just using reference photos, right? And reference screenshots. So if I start a prompt now, I'm going to write it out as we speak and effectively show you how I would build this first initial version of the app, right? Which would be the front end page, a domain input search bar, a sidebar, and then some sort of simple table, right? So for now, let's build a front end. So before I get into this, actually, guys, I'm using Lovable, right? So Lovable.dev is a full-scale sort of like front-end, back-end, etc. Builder. It's like Cursor. It's kind of like ChatGPT, but for building apps, right? And there's plenty of different plans. There's like a free plan, that kind of thing. But in the future, I'm going to be doing like, cost-based ways of building apps. So building an app for free, building an app with paid plans. Lovable is a tool that I pay for. I'm not affiliated with it. They don't even have an affiliate program. And none of the tools that I talk about today have an affiliate program or anything. So I'm just trying to give you guys exactly what you need, right? So you sign up to Lovable.dev, or, whatever you want to sign up to, and you click, for now, let's build a front end for this use case. So I want a simple app with sidebar and navigation that allows users on the dashboard to input a domain into the search bar, click scrape, and then we call upon a backend API, Firecrawl, to scrape the website and save the data. I want the app to be beautiful. I want it to be sleek, Airtable style. So something quite important, guys, is that you can reference tools that you like the look of. So I like the Stripe UI. You know, when you're on Stripe and it's like really beautiful, I'm going to say Stripe style, Airtable style, table UI, minimalist, etc. I will add reference images into this to help, right? So now let's talk about the functionality. So sidebar with dashboard, settings, export, and let's just say help. Dashboard is a table with a input field at the top, a few columns in the table, date, website, scrape data. Let's talk about, for example, let's add another data, analysis, and for example, when was the scrape, when scrape was successful, whatever it may be, right? So the next thing we're going to do is add functionality, or at least some degree of like connection to Firecrawl, but we're not going to build the back end yet. Take the images that I add to build this initial dashboard. By the way, guys, you can make spelling mistakes and stuff. It's not going to matter. It'll understand what you mean. Build this initial dashboard. No back end for now. We will figure that out later. So what I'm going to do now is go over to Dribble and find some images of UIs and front ends that I like, right? Because we're just going to be using this as a reference. So if I go to table, if I look up table UI, let's try and find some beautiful tables, right? So I quite like the look of this table. So that's really pretty. So I'm going to click copy image, and it's as simple, guys, as pasting it in like that. I want to have a search input. So I'm going to look up a search input. So I quite like the look of, because we only need a simple search input, I quite like the look of this one. So I'm going to copy that image. And then as a sidebar, let's look at some nice sidebars, and it will hopefully, you know, obviously take the sidebar design and go from there. So I'm thinking I just like this sidebar. So copy image and then do this. Now, what is happening here, guys, right? So again, what I said, we don't need to understand how to design front ends. We don't need to be designers. We don't need to be engineers. We're just asking a tool like Lovable to create things based off of reference images. So now you can pretty much make things look exactly how you like them. I've added Stripe to, as this should be the most semblance to our UI, right? So if I go to Stripe, Stripe UI, and then where are we? Just something that resembles the Stripe UI. So we could say something, we could just show something like that, right? Who cares? And we're going to go back. So now I'm going to actually paste this in. And Lovable is going to take in this information and start creating the app for us, right? So again, what we've done is we've refused to let it work on our back end, because right now we just want a front end. Later on, we're going to add the sign in and sign up functionality, the saving data to the back end. And then we have a working app, guys. We just need to make sure that Firecrawl works with it, which is a tool that we're going to be using for this, you know? So you see what I've done there, guys, while it's doing this. I've asked it to create a front end, and I didn't need to be a designer because I've explained exactly what the tool is, going to do. And I've asked it to create a front end based off of the reference images. So again, what did I say, guys? Earlier on, I said that we are in an unprecedented age where you can basically ask the AI to clone something or take full semblance of something and create an app that you really like using, right? So for this case, it's not going to look exactly the same as all of these previews, guys. Remember that it has to think for itself. It has to sort of understand how things work. What we're here to do is explain why it doesn't look the way we want it to look, why it does look the way we want it to look, etc. Right? So let's take this example now. So we've got a beautiful front end. If we actually open up this preview in a new tab, it's going to say no preview deploy found for the project. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to go back here. And now let's just do a test of this. So obviously nothing's going to happen because we don't have a server set up or anything like that. But you can just add, for example, apple.com, and then obviously nothing's going to really happen. It's just going to say website scraped successfully or whatever it may be. So what don't we like about this tool, guys? So far, what's amazing is that we can just basically vibe with it and say, I don't like this, I don't like that, right? So I'll just show you an example of this. So ask Lovable, I would say, and I typically do numbers. So can we add a flame icon to the scrape button? And what you can do is click edit and you can choose the button, right? And margin, whatever. And I'm going to click, just ignore that actually. Can we add a flame icon to the scrape button? Can we make the outlines of the table a bit lighter and more modern? And then can we make the sidebar more beautiful with more gaps and design, right? So again, guys, you see how I'm being super vague here, but the whole point is that I'm just asking it very, very vague things. And because the AI has so much knowledge, it kind of understands what I mean, right? So can we make the outlines of the table like a bit cooler? You can just use these vibe words, guys. You don't have to understand coding or anything like that. You can just say, oh, that doesn't look sexy enough, right? If I just say, all in all, make things look a bit sleeker, it's just gonna change the vibe of the whole project, right? So again, this is only the front end, but let's just add this in, right? So now what's happening is, again, like I said, we don't have a back end, so none of this data is actually saving. None of the data is like being saved anywhere. You can't even log in and out of this app right now, right? But you see how we're creating the tool as we go along. So I'll help enhance the visual design to make it sleeker and more modern. So just to recap, guys, I'll keep on doing some recaps. All we've done is ask for Lovable to create the actual, front end, and we've given it some example UIs from Dribble. So Dribble is free, everything is free, and it's just going to change things. So again, hasn't really done a lot, right? It hasn't really changed much. It's added the flame icon like we wanted, which is absolutely great, right? So now let's see if the preview is working. I feel like it's not going to. Awesome, the preview works. So this is great, guys. So what we're going to do, let's test if the settings page even exists. It doesn't even exist, right? So that's absolutely fine. The exports page doesn't exist. Help page doesn't exist. So let's go to exports, and I'm going to now build the export page. So thanks, list looks great. Take my new reference images and build a beautiful export page that allows users to see their recent exports. So all this is going to be, guys, is basically when you have a table like this and you have 1,000 websites that you've scraped, we want to be able to export that data, right? So basically, the table should have date, time, name of export, number of leads or data, number of leads, an export button, and a status button. Complete, right? So all this is that if ever we scrape 1,000 websites with this tool, we don't want them to just fill up on the front end. We want to be able to export that data. So if you have Apple, Samsung, Nvidia, and 1,000 other sort of, websites that we've scraped, we can't just we want to be able to look at it. We want to be able to extract that data. We want to be able to export it. We want to be able to, bring it to an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, whatever it may be. So now that we've asked it to create the exports page, I'm going to look up exports on Dribble, and we can just give it some dumb thing like this, right? So again, it's just about design. It's just about the style, the taste. And we're going to just add a list UI. So maybe again, it's kind of all looking pretty similar. We can just add this, copy image. And it's just the point of giving it a bit more some more tasteful sort of vibes, guys, and what we want the actual tool to do, I suppose, So I feel like my camera's going a bit wild right now. So I think it's because my webcam's broken. So date and time, name of export, number of leads, an export button, and a status button, and that's fine, right? So next, create a settings page that allows users nothing real yet, just placeholder info to access a few tabs. Their subscription tab, billing tab, their email and nickname tab, their what would we have on a settings page, guys? So access a few tabs, their subscription, their email and nickname, and say, for example, their cookie preferences. I don't know. I don't give a shit, right? So, and then help desk should forward user the help nav in the sidebar to, let's say it just forwards it to my Twitter profile, because right now, guys, like I said in a previous video, we're not looking to create these beautiful support systems. To be honest, with all of my softwares, I just forward people to my Twitter to DM me. My DMs are open and they can just ask me a question about the app. Do you know what I mean? X.Ollie as well. So let's add all of this now. Let's add a quick settings page UI so that it knows what we're on about. Let's just add this one. This is a pretty beautiful one. Where are we? Sleek script. And now let's go. So this looks great. Take my new reference images, build a beautiful exports page, date, time, name of export, whatever it is. Next, create a settings page that allows users to access their billing script. Yeah. So now we've got the front page, which is the websites that we've extracted, and the settings is being built, the export is being built, and the help is sending them to my Twitter, right? So again, we're done, guys. This is basically the front end in a nutshell, and we don't really have to do anything else. When we create the apple.com, when we write apple.com in the scrape bar, and then we click scrape, when we've got the back end set up, it's actually going to allow us to effectively save the data to the back end. And we're going to be using something called Supabase for that back end, okay? So I might just add some cute little sort of additional settings here. Might add a bit more of I suppose a dashboard to this, because right now it looks pretty bare. But you've got to think, guys, when you're building a really, really beta version of your tool, how much do you need? You've got to take the initial idea and the initial style of what you want for your app and what you want the app to do. And you can't be stressing about all these tiny little details and how things look and stuff. You just got to worry about what it does. So exports page, it looks like this is done, right? So if I go over to the settings, and there's the settings, which is great, right? A problem here, guys, is that it doesn't have the sidebar. So we can't actually navigate If we click account, awesome, that's looking good. We can't actually like navigate back to the side, you know, back to any of the pages. So I'm going to say thanks, but the new pages don't have a sidebar. But the settings looks great, thanks. What I'm going to do now is I'm just, you can go here and go to an actual page. I'm going to go to the export page and see that again. Also, export page doesn't have a sidebar either. So that's okay because it's just going to fix it itself. And again, this data, guys, is just dummy data, right? So all in all, looks great. But make sure that the new pages have the same size font as the dashboard and style, so it's all congruent, right? So now we've asked it to not only add the sidebar, guys, to the new pages it's created, because sometimes it just makes that mistake. But the other thing is that we've asked it to make all of the designs more consistent with the rest of the app. So again, guys, this is front end stuff. Like it just doesn't really matter that much what you're building, as long as it works to create, it works to give that value, right? So remember what our value is that we are creating a front end app that allows users to input a domain and then scrape the data, right? So that is as simple as that. Now, once that's done, it's going to be editing the files, as you can see here. And there we are. We now have the dashboard in the sidebar. We have the settings export like normal. And we can now go from page to page, effectively navigating through. And that has just sent me to Ollie Rosewell, which is fine. Okay, what do we do now? So now, if we have got a very, very simple front end that allows us to scrape data from a website and save it. Oh, actually, as you can see here, inside the table on the dashboard, there's no way to see the data that was actually scraped, e.g. the text and stuff from a website. Add a button that says view scraped data in a new column to the right of analysis column. So once we've done that, and we're going to add that in, now it's going to add another column to the table that allows someone to view the scrape data. And we obviously want to be able to view the actual scrape of apple.com or example.com once it's done. Now, guys, it looks pretty boring, but once this is done, we've actually completed the front end of the app, right? And then I'm going to show you how to build the back end. So I've added a new actions column, so it looks pretty ugly right now. If we go to the preview, actions, view scrape data, okay, that'll do. Looks pretty ugly, but this is the whole point of just building an MVP, guys. I'm going to stop the video now and go straight into the backend. So the backend is what we'll be talking about regarding Supabase and Firecrawl, okay? So let's just recap, guys. We have asked Lovable to create this app based off of, sort of like simple UI designs that we've given it. We've asked it for a sidebar, a dashboard where you can save the scrapes of data, an export page, a help page, or a help, navigator, the settings page. All of these things work. And now we actually need to make the functionality of clicking scrape and then it's saving data to a backend table. The other thing that we need to do is massive, which is authentication, guys. Look, you can't log in or log out right now. You're not a user. This is just like a raw app that anyone can look at, right? We need to create authentication so that only a logged in user can use this. Only a paid user, for example, can use this, and only someone who's logged in as themselves can see their own data, because it's not going to be very good if you can log in as anyone and see anyone's data, because that's a massive security issue. So let's stop the video and then I'll go into the back end now. Right. So this is the harder part. So now that we have created a very simple front end, we actually need to add authentication. So, user login and user sign up, that kind of thing. And we need to actually allow it so that users can save the data, right? So, by the way, I've got my camera back on because my camera was just having a ridiculous mare in the last section of the video, right? So anyway, let's assume now that we've got the front end done and the back end is basically a system that we'll build, and you just copy me, a system that we build so that users can log in and log out. They can save the data that they've scraped and they can export the data that they've scraped. For now, what that will look like is a sign in and sign up page. When users sign in to the dashboard, they see their scraped data. They can add a new domain like apple.com and scrape it, and it will save the data here. And then they'll be allowed to, effectively change something like their nickname in the back end, right? So the first thing we're going to do, guys, is head over to something called supabase.com/dashboard/signup, right? I'm going to create a new account here. So let's say Oliver Burt 3 + 100. My password is going to be example for YouTube 123, right? And then exclamation mark. So example for YouTube 123 exclamation mark. I'm going to click sign up. It's going to send me an email confirmation, and I'll just do that now. We're going to click the email confirmation, confirm email address. It's going to send us hopefully to the dashboard, and I'm just going to send you through the whole process of creating the project, right? So we're going to click new project, and it's going to ask us to create an organization. So the Oliver Burt 3 + 100 email organization, we're going to click create organization. Now it's going to ask us if we want to create the project with a specific region. So I'm going to add a database password, which will be the same as my login. So example for YouTube 123. And for now, I'm going to make the region Ohio, right? It doesn't matter. It matters, guys, long term if you're making, a project with thousands of people. But for now, I just use the US because it's just, it's just a massive place where most of my users are, right? I'm going to click create project. And now it's going to say, we are provisioning your database and API endpoints and all this malarkey, right? You don't have to worry about any of this. Just going to give you a quick setup, a quick sort of tour around the dashboard after this is done, okay? So our back end has now been built, right? So effectively, guys, Supabase is just a service that allows you to create a back-end server as if you were like an extremely sort of powerful developer, right? All we need to know is that here in authentication, in the dashboard sidebar, is where all of our users are going to be. We don't have to worry about anything else, really. I'm going to go into project settings, authentication. I'm going to go to general user sign up, go to email. And for now, I'm going to remove the need for a user to confirm their email because it's just an extra bit of friction that we don't want, guys. Okay. I'm going to go down here and save this. Don't have to worry about any of this. Now we're going to go back to our dashboard and just start from here, right? I'm going to go over to our Lovable tool. And I'm going to say thanks for all the help. Now I want to, some fucking guy beeping outside, man. Now I want to create my sign up flow and user authentication with Supabase. Let's say what we want, guys. We want a new sign in, sign up page. Authentication to be fully set up with Supabase. I've disabled confirm email. Ready for this. authentication so that only a user can see their own data and log in to their own account, whatever it may be. That's just normal authentication. I now also want you to, after Supabase is connected, I want a backend table designed perfectly for the dashboard. So what does it do, guys? We're going to create a table on the back end, so don't worry about this. I'll just show you exactly how to do it. Saves the domain that the user inputs to the dashboard search field. So this is this search field, guys. We want to build the back end on Supabase so that a user can save the website URL. And that's the first thing. Allows users to save the data from a scrape. We'll use Firecrawl for this later. Shows a date of when the scrape was done. And then only users can see and access their own data. The table on the front end, guys, crucially right now, is just random dummy data. We don't want that. We want the actual data that's showing on the table to be their saved data, because right now this isn't any saved data, guys. This just doesn't exist. It's just fake, right? The table on the front end dashboard, currently with dummy data, should persist this table that we build for the user. So what does that mean, guys? When the front end persists a backend table, it just means that if you have a table on Supabase that says name is Steve, nickname is Stevie T, and website is example.com, to persist a backend table on the front end just means that it's going to show up here. That's all it means. You are just calling data from the backend. That's all it means, guys. So table on the front end dashboard, currently with dummy data, should persist this table that we build for the user. Let's call the table user underscore scrapes. Right. So what's it going to do, guys? It's going to prompt us to actually connect our Supabase accounts, right? So to implement authentication, we'll need to connect your project to Supabase first. So let's start by connecting your product to Supabase. Click on the Supabase menu in the top right. And then we're going to add another organization. We're going to authorize the API access on this organization. And now it's connecting. What it's going to do, guys, is connect our front end, dashboard to our Supabase table. We're now going to go down here and click this again and click connect. We're just going to click connect here. So now it says, please connect my Supabase project, Oliverbert3100@gmail.com's project. It says, I'm now connecting your database. It looks like you haven't created any tables. So let's get started with building the auth and the table I asked for. So what it's going to do now is it's going to create a table on the back end that is going to help a user save the data that they scrape and persist that data. So I'll help you set up authentication. First, let's create the table for storing user scrapes with proper relationships and RLS policies, guys. Don't worry about any of this. All this means is that it's going to give us a table on the back end. Just apply the changes. It doesn't matter. And now if we go over here to the table editor, we should have a new table, guys. And look at this. ID, user ID, their domain, the scraped data, the status, created at and updated at, which is fantastic. We've now got a back end, guys. That's it. We've now got a back end that used to take years and years to build, and years of experience, sorry, to build properly. And now this AI has created our backend. What's it going to do now, guys? Now that we have our database table, let's create the authentication system. So remember, guys, authentication is just a username and a password and a sign in and sign up. So we need to allow users to log in and log out of this dashboard. And if they get their password wrong, it doesn't let them in. If they try and log into someone else's, it doesn't let them in. And if they try and see someone else's data, it doesn't let them in. If we really quickly go here, we can see a glimpse of what policies are. So inside the table on the back end, there is a policy that says users can insert their own scrapes. So in other words, that's what it needs to be, is users can create their own data, right? Next is a policy that says users can view their own scrapes, right? And then users can update their own scrapes and they can delete their own scrapes. So all this means, guys, is that our backend is now built to handle all of the requests that are possible from a user. So a user wants to send data to the backend. It wants to see the data. Now, a complete authentication system has been built, so log in or sign up, protected routes that require authentication. So all this means, guys, is that, say if you go to, salesforce.com, that is not a protected route. If you go to salesforce.com/dashboard, that is a protected route because it is a route in the app that needs to be accessed only by users. Because imagine if you could just go to Salesforce and log into anyone's app. It wouldn't make any sense. That's what basic security is. The data is now properly persisted and protected, right? So let's try and create this, guys. We're going to click sign up. I'm going to add oliverbert3@gmail.com. And then the password is going to be example123. And we're going to create an account. But first, if we go into the dashboard, there's no data here. If we go into authentication, it says no users in your project, right? Ideally, when we create this account, a created user should appear inside the backend because we've built a backend server that is supposed to help us sign up accounts. Let's click create account. And there might be errors, right? It's asked us to check our email, but we're not going to do that. We are going to go to Auth Supabase and see if a user has been added. So a user hasn't been added, which is absolutely fine. We're going to go to Lovable and say, I tried to sign up, but it's broken. A user shouldn't need to confirm email as I've turned this off. Creating an account should create it simply and then just send them to the dashboard. We are not using auth via email verification. So in other words, we're not verifying an email because we're just making a simple app. We just want the user to be able to sign up. And guys, again, my typing is terrible, but it doesn't matter because it'll understand it. To sign up immediately and get sent into the app. So now I've told it that I tried to create an account and it hasn't let me because it's claiming that I need to confirm my email. But remember, guys, we turned off email verification inside the settings because we don't want to have to do this yet. To do this, you have to set up like email servers and stuff like that, which I'll help you build in a different video, right? I understand the issue. The sign-up flow is currently expecting email verification when it shouldn't. Let's modify the auth logic to immediately log the user in after sign-up, okay? So make sure you've disabled email confirmations. Let's go to sign up. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to say Oliver Burt. Let's just add 3+1 for now at gmail.com. I'm going to add the example 123 exclamation mark. So if we create an account now, it has logged us in, guys. Okay, which is great. Now, if we go into authentication and go to authentication, there should be a user that signs up and appears inside this project. So if we just refresh the page, as you can see, we've now got the 2 users, but we're not going to worry about this one. We're just going to worry about this one. So oliverburt3+1 @gmail.com. He is now a user, guys. He is now a user with a username and password, and he can see his own data, which is amazing, right? So let's just test this out. So I'm going to say thanks. The user is now an authenticated user on Supabase. So guys, what would have taken years now, we've done in about 20 minutes. We have created a backend server that allows users to create accounts for our web apps. That's SaaS, guys. That's all SaaS is, right? So the user is now an authenticated user on Supabase. Please persist the user's email in a tab at the bottom of the sidebar. So in other words, you know, guys, when you log into an app, it says like your email there and it says login or log out, and a log out button, tasteful sidebar, log out and email icon. I'll then test login, log out. Okay. So the user is now an authenticated user on Supabase. Please persist the user's email in a tab at the bottom of the sidebar and a logout button that is tasteful and shows an email icon. I'll help you add the user's email and logout button to the sidebar. Okay, so what this should do now, guys, is pull the user's email and persist it there, and there it is. So now we've got the user's email of the logged in user and a sign out button. So I've made the following changes. Now what we're going to do, guys, is sign out, and it's taken us there. If we try and log in with something bogus, let's just say gmail.com, whatever, and sign in, it is going to say invalid login credentials, which is great. Now if we add the email that I wanted and created and the password, which is example123, and sign in, we're in. So now we've created an app that allows you to log in and log out as a user, which would have taken weeks to build if you didn't understand how to code long ago. And we've done it in 19 minutes, guys. Okay. Awesome. So now the next thing that we're going to do is allow a user to save a domain to this backend table. Now, as you can see, the table is changed and it now says add to queue. So I'm going to say thanks. Now back to the front end. The table on the dashboard has changed. It's a weird shape. The scrape button now says add to queue for some random reason. And the table is a different shape to what it was half an hour ago, a few prompts ago. Make sure it looks beautiful and same as before. Right, now, next, add functionality, guys. So we are now going to build the backend logic that helps us scrape the website. Add functionality to the scrape button where user adds a HTTPS link, e.g. HTTPS apple.com. The apple.com domain is then saved to the backend user scrapes table. And this persists in the front end table and uses front end logic so it immediately shows up after they click save, after they click scrape. So guys, what we've done here is we've now asked it, and it's going to create functionality so that a user can go here, type in apple.com and save apple.com to their backend. Now, when we go into the table editor and user scrapes, when we add our first domain, it should say the user ID, which is us, like Oliver Burt, and it'll be like a special code, and the domain that we've saved. There'll be no scrape data or anything like that because we haven't added that logic yet, right? So if we go here, I'm going to click this. Now it's going to build us functionality to scrape the data. Sorry, not to scrape the data, but to save the domain to the backend. So when a user adds https apple.com, it's going to save that down here, and they're going to be able to see that they've added a domain, right? But it's not going to be scraped yet. So just to recap while it's doing that, we've created a dashboard, settings, export help, a login, logout system so that only users who have created an account can log in and log out. And now we've got our cool looking table back and it says no scrapes yet. Add a website to start scraping. So now the scraping flow now works like this. User enters a HTTPS URL. On click, it extracts the domain, apple.com, saves to the database, and immediately shows in the table. So let's just test this because it's stepped ahead a bit for us, right? So HTTPS apple.com, right? I'm going to click scrape. And now it's saved it to this front end table. When we go to the SQL editor, and go to user scrapes. Now, guys, we've got the ID of the scrape, the user ID, which is us, so 4DC. Just to double check, you go to Authentication. Notice how the email has a unique user ID and it says 4DC999 and whatever it may be. Right, we go to Table Editor. You see that the user ID is that. So that's how we know that a user can only see their domains, right? So if we go back here, something's logged us out. That's absolutely fine. So Oliver Burt 3, let's say +1, and then example 1, 2, 3, and then log back in. Hopefully that'll log us back in. And now, guys, can you see that we've logged back in, and the data that we saved earlier on is still there, which is fantastic. Like, we have done it. We have now allowed users, and let's just do this again. Salesforce.com. Scrape, and it's added Salesforce. We go back here and just go back to the table. We now see that Salesforce is there. So now, guys, to recap, we've created a front-end dashboard that allows users to add domains to a back-end, and they can only log in and out to their own account, and they can only see their own data. If someone else logs in, they will not be able to see this because we have policies on the table that protects users' data, okay? That's why you can't log into Zoom and join someone else's call with their family. It's because there is authentication systems in place, guys, okay? So now we're going to go into something called Firecrawl, and Firecrawl is what is going to help us actually scrape the data from the website. So I'm just going to stop the video and then start again, and that'll be part 3 of the video, which is scraping the actual data and saving it to the back. So now that we've done this, we've done the front end and we've set up a simple back end, I'm now going to go into Firecrawl, which is a API that we're going to be using to scrape the data, and I'm going to build the logic to scrape the data extremely quickly from apple.com. So all of the data and text from apple.com's main page will be available to the user, okay? Right, if you're still watching right now, obviously fantastic, right? Like and subscribe and all that malarkey, right? But what we're going to do now is I'm going to sign up to something called Firecrawl, which allows you to scrape the data from a website, right? So if we go back as a recap, we're going to go into the dashboard, and we're going to add a website to scrape, right? The status is pending because we haven't scraped anything, and we can't view anything because there's no data. On the back end, you can see that we've got Apple and Salesforce, no scraped data. The status is pending. So here's what we're going to do. I am now using Firecrawl. I signed up to the Firecrawl API, and I now want to add functionality so that when a user adds the domain to the backend user scrapes table, which is the table that we've got, guys, just to double check, we've got this user scrapes table. And when the user adds a domain, it sends it to the backend. That's fine. Backend user scrapes table. The Firecrawl API is also invoked, and the data is scraped from the website and saved to the, what is the column called? The column is called the scraped underscore data column. So that's what we're going to do, guys. So if I really quickly show you what Firecrawl does. So if we sign up now, I'll just go through this. Name, let's say Oliver 3+1, and then the password can be we're going to click sign up, and the plus symbol. Oh, that's annoying. I'm just going to log in with Google. So now that we've signed up to Firecrawl, we have this dashboard, and there is an API key, right? So if we view that API key, now something really important, guys, never ever, this is obviously for testing purposes, never ever let anyone see your API key, right? Because they will use your API keys. So this is basically a key that tells you, okay, your account is linked to this key, right? And this happens in front-end development. If your API key is exposed to people, they will use that API key and destroy your life, right? So let's assume your API key is for ChatGPT, right? If someone gets hold of your API key, they could make 10 million requests to ChatGPT and bankrupt you, right? You do not want anyone to ever see your API key, because if they get hold of it, they can put it in their own project and spam requests, and that will cost you loads of money. So in this example, I'm using a API key, and we can copy that API key, and now we have it, right? All the API key is basically a password to say, I'm using Firecrawl, let me in, right? So in other words, excuse me, when a user saves apple.com to the back end, then our app is going to send a request to Firecrawl with the API key and say, this is my key, let me in and scrape apple.com for us. Then the scrape is going to be saved to scrape data. So we go to here. So to Firecrawl, I have the API key ready, and we need to make sure that the Supabase, we need to make sure that the scrape button calls upon the Firecrawl API to scrape the content and then save the content to the user scrapes table. Help me implement this. So this is a big step, guys. We are now asking Lovable to create a bridge between our front end table, the scrape button, and Firecrawl, which is a tool that's going to allow us to scrape the website, right? So if we go into Playground, I'll just very quickly show you what this looks like. So URL, let's add apple.com. I'm going to choose single URL, and I'm going to click run. It's going to call the scrape, and now it's scraped the URL, and it's going to save the data to our table. So as you can see, total pages scraped 1, and this is the front page of apple.com. When a user scrapes the page, it's going to save that data to the scrape data column, right? So I help you integrate Firecrawl with your scraping functionality. We need the Firecrawl key. So what you can do, guys, is to keep things really safe, and you can be safe with Lovable. You are going to go to Firecrawl, go to Overview, and click Copy API Key, add API key, and submit that. Now that you've added the API key, it is going to create the functionality so that when a user adds the domain and clicks scrape, it's going to add the domain to the backend and it's going to begin the scraping process. Help you implement the Firecrawl integration. Now, it says, let's create an edge function to handle the Firecrawl calls, right? So in other words, an edge function is just like a little server that gets launched to make a request. So for example, when you log into an app, a little edge function says, Ollie has logged in, show him the data. When you log into Zoom to see, to join a call, when you log into Microsoft Teams, when you log into Notion, the little calls are made with functions, and it tells you, it gives you data and lets you in, right? So in other words, it's implemented a complete scraping solution that creates a new edge function to handle the calls, updates the front end to trigger the scraping. It adds color-coded status badges, which it's already got. So now, let's test it. Enter a URL, click scrape to start the process, and then watch the status update in real time. So, it's given us an error, guys. Now remember, with Lovable, right, if you get an error, it doesn't charge you credits for the error, right? So we're going to go here. It's going to say resolving dependencies, all this malarkey, right? So I'm going to click try to fix it. And it'll show all of the errors to Lovable, and it will create the fix. The issue is how we're importing the Supabase client in the function in Dino. We need to. So it doesn't matter about that. Don't worry. It'll just fix the bugs for you, right? So crucially, if we go over here, don't have to worry about this for now, guys. But you can go to Edge function. We don't currently have an Edge function, right? That's okay because it's going to build us one. So remember, guys, just to recap, the edge function is going to allow us to scrape the website with Firecrawl, okay? The error occurred because of ABC123. So if we go to edge functions now, the edge function should actually pop up. There it is, guys. So we're in business. So now Lovable has created, the AI has created a edge function that allows us to scrape the website. Now, all this does is when a user adds the domain, it saves like normal, but the scrape button also calls upon Firecrawl to scrape the website and then save it. So let's try this, okay? So what I'm going to do now is add a new domain. So let's say close.com. I'm going to click scrape. And I think there's going to be loads of errors, and that's okay. So close.com, it is now pending. If we go into Firecrawl and check if we've scraped anything, it's saying no. If we go into activity logs, it's saying that nothing has been scraped. And again, there's only been this Apple one as of recent, right? So let's go into the scrape website and see if anything was invoked, because maybe nothing was invoked. So logs, started scraping close.com. Okay, so this is good news. If we go into Firecrawl now and we refresh, there's still nothing, okay? So this means now that when we called upon it, it has failed, and that's okay. So if we go to this now, so we've created this, we've asked it to scrape the table, and nothing is happening. So if we refresh this, the raw table. So this is what it's all about, guys. It's all about creating, like I said, I think there was going to be an error, right? There has been an error, and that's absolutely fine, because what we're going to be doing now is debugging this error. So let's refresh this one more time. Nothing has happened. Let's go to Firecrawl one more time. Nothing has happened. Overview, and we haven't scraped any pages. So it did not work, okay? So I'm going to go to Lovable and say it didn't work. The edge function booted, and then you copy this, guys, which is the raw response, and paste that in. It started the scrape, but Firecrawl was never launched. Close.com never got scraped, and nothing ever saved to the backend user scrapes table, and the column, guys, is scraped data, isn't it? Right. So remember, just double check. When we go into the table, we're trying to scrape the data from close.com and save it to scrape data, right? That column. So what's happened here, guys? It hasn't worked. So I'm going to pop that in. And now I'm going to say add more logging to the function so we can see what's going on. This is such a crucial step, guys, right? So listen to this. When you are building with AI, you need to be very serious and very meticulous with asking the AI to add logging, right? Because logging is what's going to tell you why something is broken, and the AI won't have any reference or context. It will build things that are broken and don't fucking work, and that's okay. But you need to ask it, find your own mistakes and fix them, right? So add more logging to the function so that we can see what's going on. Now, it's going to create the function. And remember, guys, I'm going to add all of this text and all of these steps into a document so that you can just copy paste and follow along with me. But don't worry about that because, you can always reach out and ask me questions, anything like that, right? So I've added extensive logging through the edge function to track initial request data. Okay, so now when we go back to the edge function in Supabase, we've now got a new log. So if we refresh, it's shut down. So we're back to square one. That's absolutely fine. We are going to go back into Firecrawl. Sorry, back into our app. And we're going to scrape a new one. So let's scrape Nike.com. Okay. I'm going to click scrape. It's added Nike.com, which is great. Let's go into the edge function. It's 12:59. It's booted at 12:59. It has, let's go back here. So received request for Nike.com. We've got the Firecrawl API key. It's initialized the scrape. It's initialized the client on Supabase. It's updated the status to scraping. Status updated successfully. And starting Firecrawl scrape for the URL Nike.com, right? And now nothing else has happened, okay? So now if we go to activity logs, so close.com is back there. So that means that the other one ended up working, which is fine. Oh, I see what we've done. We are scraping dozens of pages, okay? So we don't want to do that, guys, because it's going to use up a lot of our plan, right? So what we're going to do instead is go to settings, docs, and we're going to go to scrape. I'm going to paste all this. Let's go to here. Activity logs. So basically, guys, just to double check what we've done. The reason it took so long, it was never broken in the first place. The reason it took so long is because it scraped like 100 of the pages from close.com, right? And that means now that we've added Nike, it's going to scrape 100 of the Nike pages as well, right? So it's shut down, and now in a couple of minutes time, it's going to scrape the data, all of it, right? We only want to scrape Nike.com as one, right? So we're going to go to settings. We're going to go to docs. We're going to go to the installation, scraping. Scrape a single URL. We're going to paste this. And we are going to say, sorry, the reason it is not really working is because we are scraping way too much data. 100 plus pages. I only want to scrape the single URL, and below I've added docs to explain this. Now, guys, just paste that in, and the AI is going to read the entire documentation. So this is another important lesson, guys. Whenever you get stuck with things, you ask it to add more logs, and you ask it to read documentation, right? So for example, I've copied all of the documentation from Firecrawl. I have now added it to the chat, and I've asked it, I don't want to scrape hundreds of pages. I only want to scrape one page, which is Nike.com, not Nike.com/shop, not Nike.com/help or whatever, support, just one page. We should use scrape URL instead of crawl URL. Okay, guys, you see what we've done. When the AI built this scraper, it is using crawl, which crawl scrapes dozens of pages. We only want to scrape one, which is the scrape URL. So let's go back. What I bet has happened now, if we go to activity logs, refresh, so it's still not done. So the Nike scrape is going to be scraping hundreds of them, right? So let's try again. If we go to sleek scrape, let's now try with zoom.com, and we're going to scrape. Now, hopefully, the scrape has changed to only scrape one page. So if we go to activity, overview, and we're going to go to the edge function and see if it started scraping things. Started Firecrawl scrape for zoom.com, which is fine. The raw one is this. And now we're going to go back to Firecrawl, activity logs. Let's just, and there we are, guys. So zoom.com has now scraped one document. And what we need to do now is check if the data has been saved to our backend. So let's go to table editor, user scrapes, domain is zoom.com, and there it is. So what we've done now is we have created a front end that allows users to add a domain, scrape the website, and now the website scrape is appearing here. Moment of truth, guys. Let's click view and see if we can see the data. And there it is. Okay, this is crazy. So now what we've done is we've created the front end, the back end. Oh God, this looks awful because it's like stuck. So let's refresh that. There we go. So this is big news because what we've done is we've built a front end that calls a Firecrawl API key. We're allowed to log in and log out. And we can scrape a website from here and then view the action, okay? And the action is the entire scrape. Thanks. But it's giant and verbose and loads of data. The scrape should only be the text and important stuff on the page. So in other words, guys, I don't like that when it scraped like all this like nonsense. Look at all this stuff, man. So it has scraped like we wanted it to, but look at all this nonsense it's scraped. It's scraped like numbers and text and stuff, right? We only want it to say like modernized workflows and stuff and all the actual text, like the stuff. Because AI, if we ask AI to analyze this, it's just going to be like, what the fuck are all these numbers, right? So now that that is done, we're going to go into quick start and we're going to go into extraction. And we are going to just copy paste this into here. And I've said, thanks, but it's giant and verbose, loads of data. There's loads of numbers and random HTML. Ideally, the scrape contains text and front end stuff only. So what are we doing here, guys? I've basically told off the AI for scraping all this sort of like shit. So there's just loads of shit on the scrape. So it's worked to scrape zoom.com and the status is completed. It's created at this time and finished at that time. We can go into the edge function and see that it successfully scraped the zoom.com table, zoom.com website, true, error, and defined markdown, whatever it may be. And now I've told off the AI and said, look, like it's basically got loads of this random stuff, right? So key changes made, added a basic schema to structure the content, use JSON format, whatever it may be, right? So now what we're going to do is if we go into scrape now again, let's scrape pipedrive.com, right? I'm going to scrape it and it started to scrape, and hopefully this scrape now will not be as ugly looking with loads of like random stuff. Oh, there's been an error. Show the log. So status error, bad request, unrecognized keys. Let's see if that actually meant something or whether it worked. So failed to scrape URL. So now our changes have caused an error. So let's copy the raw error log, go back here, and I'm just going to click try and fix it instead because it understands this problem. Error indicates page options. There's not a recognized key in the API key. Looks like let's fix this by using the correct API which is called the documentation. Okay, so basically it just basically gave me like the wrong thing, right? So it told me to do the wrong thing. So this resolve the unrecognized keys. So let's add a new oh, has it started now or something? No. So let's add a new thing. So let's actually scrape Supabase, just like the front end, or let's say Notion actually. So https://notion.com scrape. And there might be another error. If there's another error, then it means that we need to go back to the documentation and ask it to properly scrape without the errors, right? So let's go to edge function. And now it's received the scrape request for Notion and it started the scrape. So as you can see, if we just keep refreshing, let's keep going. So nothing's happening right now. That's okay. We're going to go to the activity logs. Notion has been scraped. Now let's see how the scrape looks because we asked it to be less like annoying looking. Okay. And there it is, guys. Look, there's no nonsense in this. It's just the text. Amazing. So now we've taken it from this ugly looking thing with all this like random nonsense to asking it to only return the actual data. As you can see, it's just the main content of it, right? So let's recap on what we've done, guys, all together, because this is now technically the end of the video because it's very, very simple what we've done. But I wanted to show you that you can build an app that allows you to scrape websites and allows you to create user authentication and allows you to use a backend table to save data and do stuff, right? The last test we're going to do is we're going to actually sign out, guys. And we're going to sign back in and hopefully the data that we've scraped all day is going to be there. So +1@gmail.com. And it was example123, was it? Sign in. And there it is, guys. Now, if we actually view the Notion scrape, there it is. Very, very quickly, I'm going to change this. So thanks, but make the view results modal a central modal that has an internal scroll and users can view the data in the central modal instead of this ugly, massive modal right now. Also, give the modal an X so they can shut the modal. So as you can see, guys, it's just really ugly when they click this. So when they click this, there is an X, which is fine, but I want it to be central and look cooler and have a scroll so we can scroll through the data. And again, let's just recap. We've created a front end, which is all the stuff you see here. We have created a backend server on Supabase. We have signed up to Firecrawl and gotten the API key. And now we have created a scraping mechanism that allows a user to input the data and scrape the data to their table. Now, when they log in, they can view the data they scraped. And what you would have to do next, which we can talk about in another video, is you would have to create a sort of mechanism that allowed you to queue dozens. So an example would be, I want to upload 1,000 domains as an export and then allow users to scrape hundreds at a time. Do you see what I mean? So right now, I don't want to have to scrape one at a time. I'd like to upload a CSV and then scrape the data. That is more complex, and we'll cover it in a different video. But the only thing we haven't covered, guys, which I'll cover in a different video as well, is Stripe. So we don't just want users to be able to log in and use this because you need them to pay, right? So what we're going to do is, in a different video, we'll add it so that not only do they have to be authenticated as the email, but they have to be a paying user or a trialing user in Stripe, okay? And that is as simple as that. What we're going to do now is just double check that the module looks a bit cooler. And there it is, look at that. So now if we go into, there's something weird, there's 2 X's, which we don't want, but it doesn't really matter for now. If we actually open this as a thing, let's just do one more test. Oliver Burt 3+1 at gmail.com. And then example 1, 2, 3. Let's sign in. See all the data there, and let's view. And there it is. There's the scrape data for Notion. And there's in the logs, you can see that it's successful because we called upon the backend function. It scraped Notion and then saved the scrape data to our user scrapes table. And that is our very, very simple web app that we've built in about an hour with user authentication, a backend server, and then an API call to Firecrawl to scrape the website. What I'll do, guys, I'll end the video there. If you have any questions or any ideas, let me know. But there's going to be lots of stuff coming up. I'm so proud of you guys. And thankful for you guys to have given me all these ideas to make videos and stuff. Let's just keep going. Let's keep building. Let's keep growing. Take care.